It's nice to let the music run all the way through sometimes,
Yes.
isn't it, Jonathan?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, welcome to another episode of Problem Busters with myself, Jonathan, and the Honourable Ollie.
G'day, mate. Another good evening to you.
Yes, yes.
So how's life in your world?
Oh, eventful. Towards the end of the year. Quite a busy period for everybody at the moment. But yeah, I think it's good times. I am a great uncle now,
Congratulations.
Exactly. Haha. So my great nephew had his first birthday on Saturday, and that was really good. Um, he is part Congolese, so it was a good Congolese and Jamaican celebration.
That says to me laughter, great food, and a bit of dancing. Am I
Yeah.
far off?
Oh, yes. And you know what? I think it was in that order.
Awesome. Well done.
Wonderful.
Right, so what are we going to do today, folks? So today we have with us a small business champion at the Federation of Small Business UK, and that is Andrew Murphy. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, guys. Good to be here.
Great to have you on. And so we've got lots to talk about. There's lots of things we could cover, but we're going to keep it fairly targeted, I think. So thank you for being on the show. And what we generally do is we start off with a little bit about you and what got you to here.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't want to go too far back and take up the whole time, but basically my story is much like many small business owners that I talk to, is that I started off in the corporate world. So I started off at Price Waterhouse in management consultancy, which I did for about 5 years. I then thought, do you know what? I know better than this. I'm going to start my own business. And I started a removal company, which I ran for about 15 years. And I sold that company about 2.5 years ago, and then started working with Federation of Small Business at that point.
Very good. You run it off like it's quite a normal background for people, but that's quite a resume. So when you say removals business, what do you mean by that?
So we were doing domestic removals. I had a firm up in London. We started it off, and the idea is I think we were a little bit before our time. We started it off to be a little bit like an Uber, I suppose, for removals. So if you bought something on eBay or Gumtree and you needed a van to come and pick it up, you could use us, and we'd tie all the jobs together. The power of Uber, I suppose, is the technology that they've got sitting behind that, and we didn't really have that. So we were trying to do all that stuff manually. So it kind of morphed from that idea into a more traditional domestic and commercial removal firm. So we worked with a lot of private individuals. We had contracts with councils in London. And we work with a lot of the self-storage companies to help people move their stuff in and around London and around the UK as well.
Fair enough. And moving anything anywhere, whether it's an office or a home, that's a painful back-breaking thing,
Yeah.
Right? As you know, Jonathan.
Yes, I do. Funny enough, I think a friend of mine owns his own removal business, and I do help out. I pitch in here and there,
Good for you.
Yeah, it's really good fun actually, and you get to see a lot of different places outside of London as well, because I think he covers the southeast, so really fun.
And I'm a little bit stunned because that was the most succinct summary of myself that I have ever heard in 5 years of podcasting. So well done to you, sir. That is quite amazing.
It's not about me. Come on.
And it kind of is. So I appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience does. So let's kick on then. So what was it like building that business? And I think that's going to take us into the theme of today, being hiring and managing people.
Yeah. Well, obviously, with that business, you've got a lot of moving parts, and one big part of that is the staff. It's a very labor-intensive process. You've got a lot of guys on the books, and they're all for the most part, they're all remote. So managing that people, and as we grew the business, and at one point we had about 16 vehicles running around. So that's each one of those with 2 or 3 guys on, and then obviously all the office staff. I think, staff management and remote staff management, is one of the most difficult parts of the growth of the business. I'd say without doubt, the staff management piece and finding good people and making sure that they're happy and making sure that you as a business owner are doing all the pieces that you need to do, from a sort of protection piece and a well-being piece are some of the biggest challenges I've found in growing that business.
And how did you do that at the time? So what were you doing to find your people?
Well, to start with, it was very much, in fact, I had a really good friend who worked in HR. So that was a huge benefit to us, because I could just tap into that resource. But like all business owners, when you start tapping into your friends, that's great. But there comes a point where you you kind of run out of favors. And I don't mean that they didn't tell me not to contact them anymore, but it gets to a point where you think I've actually got to do something about this. So that kind of led us to being part of the Federation of Small Business and keying into their HR and legal support.
Sure. So how did that come about, and what did that mean for you as a small business owner?
Well, actually, I think that it's kind of true now, and as it was then, is that the FSB as an organisation, for lots of business owners, is kind of a well-kept secret. So actually, I just had someone knock on the door and tell me that they were from FSB. And like a lot of business owners, I think you get contacted by lots of different people telling you they've got this great solution for you. And so initially your answer is no to everything. Otherwise, you'd be speaking to people all day trying to sell you all sorts of things. But actually, this guy made a really good point, and I think that the offer was really strong. And they are a not-for-profit organisation, so access to it was really good. And for me, the main piece was around that people management. So getting the correct contracts in place, getting the well-being support in place, guidance around any issues, also covering off health and safety stuff. So there was a lot that he was talking about that really made sense for me as a business owner. And I think, well, I can't speak for all business owners, but what I see a lot is that everybody is so busy in the doing of their business that you often overlook some of the legislative, shall we say, or some of the background stuff, that some of the heavy lifting of running a business kind of falls by the wayside because you're so busy doing. So it's quite a good time for us to kind of reflect on what that looked like, tighten up our HR policies, make sure that we were supporting people as we needed them. So he timed it quite well for us.
Fair enough. And what does FSB stand for?
Federation of Small Business. It's been going about 45 years. It supports around about 160,000 businesses in the UK. It is a not-for-profit, as I mentioned. They do a whole raft of things, not just the kind of HR support and the legal support. Through COVID is a really good example, because we lobby government directly. So things like the furlough scheme, the bounce back loans, rates grants, the self-employment scheme have all been off the back of the lobbying piece that FSB do. And I think that bit gets lost on a lot of people. But in my opinion, having an organisation that is a voice for small business in the UK is a really powerful thing to be part of, and it has certainly benefited lots of small businesses. There is sometimes a disconnect between central government thinking and what it's like to run a business on the ground, and that's kind of where we come in.
Yeah, do you want to just tell us, and I think we'll actually have one of your colleagues on to tell the story in full detail in another episode, but do you want to just give us a summary of how that happens in action when it came to the furlough scheme?
Yeah, so the furlough scheme, and we have, like I say, we have a powerful lobbying voice, and that is, direct access to the politicians. And we were actually mentioned by Richie Sunak in some of his speeches. But Mike Cherry, who heads up that lobbying piece, they were really vocal around what the furlough scheme would look like, and it can be criticised, and a lot of the government response can be criticised back and forth. But if you think about the way that government works generally, it's kind of slow, and things like the furlough scheme would probably take a couple of years of thinking before they came into existence. The point about the furlough scheme is when it came out, it was supporting 100% of the wages of the employees. And then it was going to be reduced, I don't know if anyone remembers, but it was going to be reduced down to about 20% at one point. And part of our lobbying was that was maintained up until this point now. And some people would argue that's a good thing, and others that it wasn't a good thing. But overall, that has supported a lot of business through really tough times. And as I say, that's as a direct result of the lobbying arm that we have.
Yeah, and I guess Jonathan and I have both worked in fintech for a while, and so we can both, I think, remember the what were they called, Jonathan? The Sybil loans, right?
Yeah,
Which
Sybil.
which looked like it was going to be happening around the time of the pandemic starting and small business starting to struggle, and the idea of furlough compared to a small business loan.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it must have been a godsend for literally thousands of businesses and their families.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you became a member and started um, drawing on the services, what did that actually mean to you? You talked about managing people and finding people being a lot of effort and a lot of hard work. So how did the FSB physically support you on that area?
Well, so for instance, from the very starting point, that they have a legal hub, so you can dive in there, and there's a whole load of resources inside that around HR, around legal contracts, and so on. But for us, it was that we were able to dive in there and get employment contracts and handbooks and policies that were totally up to date, and we can just download that from the portal. In addition to that, we were able to speak to an HR expert at no additional cost. So it's like having your own internal HR team, but it's external, and you only access it when you need it. We actually, on the removal side as well, we actually had to go to tribunal with a member of staff, and we were supported by FSB through that. And in fact, they actually attended the tribunal with us. And if anyone's been through a tribunal, it's it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work to go through. We were successful; there was no issue. But regardless of that, you still have got 3 or 4 months of preparing documents and making sure that you don't do anything wrong to trip yourself up. And so, just having someone there to kind of hold your hand and guide you through that was really great for us, because as a business owner, we really cared about our employees. Obviously, it doesn't always work out, but having someone there to hold your hand through that process was huge for us. It was really huge.
Yeah, and there's this real feeling, isn't there? Even when it's not your business and you're managing a team, I'm thinking of you and I, Jonathan. There's this real feeling of wanting to look after your people, and at least to me, it feels like a real tangible responsibility, and a lot of elements of it are quite unknown until they occur. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Oh yeah, no, I was saying, yeah. I mean, having that support there as well, because having policies in place for a number of things that could occur, but haven't just, is, I think, a good start to being able to support your employees and members of your team effectively.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you do differently next time around, Andrew? Let's assume you're a plucky ex-consultant thinking I'll start a business.
Going out again, yeah. Well, I mean, I'd asked for that help earlier. I think that, and I see this in a lot of, all I do all day is talk to business owners, across a wide range of industries and sectors and sizes. And I think the mistake is that you just can't know everything, and you can't know what you don't know. So you've got to make a decision in the business at what point do you reach out for external help. Let's say, we in the removal company, we knew how to do the removals, we knew how to serve the clients, but all the other stuff, the HR and the now GDPR and the pension management and the legal contracts, all of that stuff. And it doesn't matter if you're, a coach or you're selling candles, or doesn't really matter what the business is, you've still got these legal obligations to fulfill. Are you really the best person to be doing that? Probably not. The answer is probably not. And so just kind of having the understanding that some things you need external help with. I think that for me is really key, is reaching out and finding the right people to support you with those things, so that you can focus your attention on, either delivering great service or delivering great products, pleasing your customers, growing your brand, growing your team, just reaching out for that kind of external help, and recognizing that you're not always the best person to answer all those questions.
Okay, so On that basis, so say I'm Joe Blogs here. I've realised that hold on, I do need some external help. So listening to podcasts at the moment, if I'm saying, oh, I need a bit of help, what steps could I do, or could people listening now take to sort of first reach out and get that assistance?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking specifically about the FSB,
Oh yes.
yeah, I mean, the first thing is just to have a look at the website, and on there you'll see under the membership all the things that it covers, and it ranges from things like tax investigation protection, which, by the way, I think is going to be a huge issue going forward. If people don't know what that is, basically the tax investigation of the last few years. Um, to HR to legal. I mean, we get an overview, but the way that the FSB is structured is there are people like me all over the country, membership advisors or small business champion, as I've renamed myself, and we know what the product is, and we can talk any business owner through that. So I'm happy to talk to anyone. We can put my contact details in here, and I can either talk you through it myself, or I can connect you to someone locally. And we have a big network. And as I say, it's a not-for-profit organization. And our role really here is to guide and support small businesses, because we recognize that they are the backbone of this economy. They probably make up about 70 to 80% of the employers in this country. And we're here to give them that guidance. So definitely reach out, to have a look at the website, or reach out to your membership advisor, and I'm happy to direct people to that myself.
Awesome. I think we can put that into the show notes as well. So to the listeners, this will be at the bottom of our show notes on this episode.
Yeah.
Nice one. So maybe just reflecting on, actually, there's one thing we should talk about first. We're not talking about a lot of money, are we? And I think that's important. It's a big part of the value of the service, right, Andrew?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we are not for profit, and what that means is there is a charge, obviously, to be a member. It's not for nothing, but everything that we take in membership is filtered back into supporting real kind of visceral support for business, be it the lobbying, we run networking events, be it the legal, be it the free business bank account we do, so on and so forth. The starting point is surprisingly low, I think, is £147 a year. And then it kind of grows by the number of people in the business by about £50 per every 5 employees. So if you're 1 to 5, it's like 200 quid a year. Obviously, that is reflective of how much you would use the service. The more staff you have, the more likelihood that you're going to need, some of that guidance in place. So in my opinion, that is a very reasonable price. In fact, it's probably too cheap, but there you go. Can't dictate that piece. But there's a lot of value in there.
Sure, and to me, this and the reason I really, really, really wanted to have you on the show is, I've worked for a lot of businesses that serve very, very small business, sole traders, self contractors, and IT contractors,
Yeah.
and I've also been that person a few times, right? And
Yeah.
it is an enormous amount of work that I didn't want to do. I just wanted to focus on the thing that I did do, right?
Correct.
On the business, not. I wanted to work on the business, not necessarily in it, and on the paperwork. So, and to me, this is in the same sort of vein as Nationwide, or as Co-op, or other organisations and credit unions who care more about the thing they are there to do than making a profit. And I think the word deserves to get out there, because we all have family members who've had trouble when they've been running a small business, and I'd like to think that that 165,000 businesses will grow rapidly, because it is a minefield, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a total minefield. And that's really interesting that you say that. And one thing to add is that we have a lot of sole traders that are members. So, it's in terms of business owners, you are a business owner if you are a sole trader. You have to do a tax return. You have obligations under GDPR and your legal contracts and so on and so forth. So we have sole traders, we have contractors, we have people with 50 employees. We cover the whole spectrum, because the background stuff of running a business in the UK is the same, albeit in different quantities, but we support everyone and everyone in that space.
Yeah, I think having the sole trader piece is for me is really appealing, only because it I guess I wouldn't say lowers the barrier to entry, but there's a ton of resources available to people who traditionally have not had the chance to. Okay, let me speak to somebody who was a consultant or somebody who's really experienced in this field, and if it's not in your sort of sphere of in your social sphere to sort of speak to these business owners or consultants about the different things such as tax and starting a business and all the legal pitfalls, then it's really valuable to actually be able to have this service and have
Yeah,
all
no,
that
I definitely
information to
agree with
hand.
that, John. And I think, running certainly as a sole trade and even, with a couple of employees within the business, if you're the sole director, it's quite isolating. It can be quite isolating and the buck does stop with you as that business owner. So, if you can turn to a trusted resource that says, actually, we're here to help with that buck, we can tell you what you need to do in these situations. That's a great resource to have access to because, you know, as I say, it's quite isolating, and you really want to be focusing, as you said, Ollie, you want to be focusing on delivering good service and good products, not worrying about, is my GDPR done or have I got the legal piece in place that I need to have. That's leave that for someone else.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say and you're based in Brighton, am I right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So just based on your region and talking to people out and about every day, what would you call your top five things that worry small business owners that probably translate directly to listeners going and ensuring those things are all organized for themselves?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, as I said at the beginning, is the people management piece. It's recruiting well, it's making sure that staff are happy, and then dealing with issues. And I think it's we can't brush over the fact that there will be problems with employees from time to time, and it's managing that in the right way. So no, I think it very much, staff management, finance, obviously another one. Getting new customers on board, building the brand. We help with that through the networking, and we're actually launching a portal where businesses can trade with each other as well, so members can trade with each other. So actually, get new customers from that. Certainly, I think, as I mentioned at the outset, I think the tax investigation piece is something just to have in the background, really. The revenue, I was reading a stat from the revenue that for every pound they invest in tax investigation, they return £15. So that's quite a good return on your investment. And obviously, over the last 18 months, they've invested a lot, they've spent a lot of money on supporting businesses. And so, what is one of the ways that they can recoup that? Well, they can start doing tax investigations. And there's a misconception, I think, that you won't be investigated if you haven't done anything wrong. Well, you will be investigated regardless of whether you've done right or wrong. You still have to go through the process, which could be 12 to 18 months. And at the end, you might hopefully be found that you didn't do anything wrong, but you've still had to pay your accountant and you've still gone through that process. And that is more time drained for you to go through that. And again, we support with that with having ex-tax inspectors who work for us and would talk to revenue on your behalf, and we'd pay your accountancy fees during that as well. So that's another thing to bear in mind. How many do I need? 5? 3 I've got so far, haven't I? What,
Yeah.
what else? I think yeah, I don't know if I can get to 5. I mean, they're the main ones that I'm talking about at the minute. I think just as a kind of general statement for the businesses that I'm talking to at the moment, I think we're seeing a lot of positivity coming out of COVID now. I know we're not out of it completely, but certainly over the last 18 months, it's been a bit of a roller coaster for all sorts of businesses, but we're seeing lots of new businesses start up. We're seeing lots more positivity. We're seeing people getting back out there. And I think, the economy is it's in a good place, and small businesses are in a good place to capitalize on the business and the trade that is going forward at the moment. So, I think it's not been an easy ride for the last 18 months. That is for sure. But overall, at the minute, I'm seeing a lot more positivity than we did, when this first struck, and everyone was just a bit dumbfounded about what they were supposed to do and how we deal with it. But I think that's, we're in a positive place now.
Good to hear it. Can I throw you a curveball? What's
Go.
if I say, what's the most interesting idea for a business that you've come across in your travels? What's the first one that comes to mind?
Oh, I don't know if I can tell you because of all the NDAs. What can I...
It could be. Gee, I really didn't think that could be a business.
That's a good question. That is a curveball. What have I seen recently? I've got a really interesting chap that I've been speaking with recently. He is, I think he's got some ski. He's a self-professed geek. He's a self-professed geek, and he's got some idea about becoming a Jedi and doing something like that. I don't really understand it, but that's the most left field that I've seen at the minute. It's certainly way out there. It was beyond my understanding, but
that answer surpasses all my wildest dreams.
Yeah, there you go. Setting up a Jedi alliance. There you go.
Yeah. Well, he's got his first customer here. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, come on, John. I'll put you two in touch. There you go.
There we go. Lovely.
But that is a big part of that is the big part of the network, isn't it? That and I remember when we were chatting the other day in the lead up to this episode, Andrew, you were talking about how COVID and being forced to be remote has actually brought quite a lot of networking into a new age, right?
Yeah, 100%. So we used to run monthly networking groups. We'd very often have, maybe 15, 20 businesses. It was kind of more of a social thing. They'd get together and this is, it's good. It works. They just come together, have lunch and have a bit of a chat about how the month's been. I wouldn't say there was loads of business done, but now that it's all moved online, and I know some people don't really like that, but there is, in my opinion, a huge opportunity because you can now network with your potential customers and people that you can work alongside. So your business partners anywhere in the country and, in fact, anywhere in the world. And we're seeing that now with the likes of Zoom platform, and there's another great one. I forget the name of it now. There's other variants of Zoom that are kind of a bit more interactive, and you can move around tables and so on and so forth. So we've certainly seen that from our networking activity. We're getting 40, 50 people attending those. We're seeing people network and do business with each other all over the country, and that is a huge opportunity in my opinion. And it comes back to the bit I was talking about before about how it can be quite isolating running your own business.
Yeah.
So getting out there and meeting people from all over, and maybe you have a chat and you find, well, I think actually maybe I might be speaking out of turn, but maybe Ollie and John, you can relate to this because you met like that and you decided you're going to do a podcast together, right? So there's chance for collaboration as well as actually just doing business. And that, to me, from the back of this is the big opportunity that's come out of COVID is people are now happy to do these kind of meetings. And if you say, well, actually, I'd really like to meet you in person, you still have the opportunity to do that, but you can actually be a bit more, you can spread yourself a bit more geographically in the first place by attending those meetings. I think that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. And we've seen it before, haven't we, Ollie? We had an expert on here in terms of sort of building remote communities. And yeah, pretty much what you described was sort of the benefits of having a framework of being able to contact people who are hundreds and thousands of miles away, and sort of having that opportunity to speak with people you really didn't network with before because you were quite localized. So
yeah, Zoltan Vass, right? And,
yes, Zoltan.
And I remember when Zoltan was talking, I was thinking, this guy has been talking to people about the need to build remote teams and how if the best person you find is across the ditch in another country, that's okay. That can work. It's worth it. In fact, it's probably better because you want the talented people wherever they might be. And he's
Yeah.
been talking to people about this for like 15, 20 years. And
Yeah.
there's probably been this watershed moment in the last 18 months. In fact, I know there has been for him where now people are just like, yeah, of course, I have to
Yeah.
do that. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is one of the key things where I think I asked him, what's one of the key things of effectively working remotely? And he said it was centralize your information, have a centralized sort of source of information. And here we are with the FSB having this hub of all this information and resources for people to access remotely as well. So I think it's pretty poetic, if you ask me.
Indeed. Indeed. Jonathan, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Andrew about the FSB? Or should we move into your favorite section?
Oh, I think we can move into to my faves, to one of my favorite sections. So this will be Andrew, the sharing section, where
Okay.
we get to know a little bit more about yourself and your interests. So I usually kick off with a doozy. So the first question is, who do you most look up to in the world?
Okay. Right.
Mm.
Do you know what? I spent, like I said earlier, I spend my life talking to business owners, from people who are just thinking about setting up to people who've been established for a while. And I'm just going to categorize them all as the people I look up to in this world, because in my opinion, it takes real courage and real conviction to start a business. It's not an easy thing. And like I said, give my example. I worked in a corporate world. I got paid quite well. To suddenly say I'm not going to do that anymore, and I'm not my own favorite person, by the way, but I'm just talking about in terms of the business owners I talk to. I think it's a really brave thing to do, and I have nothing but admiration from anyone who says, do you know what, I've got this passion, or I've got this idea, I am going to go out there and I'm going to make it work. And I think that those people really do deserve our admiration. So that's everyone who's set up their own business. That's who I look up to.
Fair
Awesome.
play.
Yeah, that's a lovely response. Actually, that's probably one of our top ones, Ollie.
I reckon.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right, I'll take the next one, eh? So,
Mm-hmm.
what book or film or Netflix show most got you thinking recently?
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot. One thing, it's a slightly older book now. I know he's got a new one out, but there's a great book by, have you guys heard of Jordan B. Peterson?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think he's a Canadian psychoanalyst, and just a huge intellectual power. And a lot of his work is it just makes your brain hurt, frankly, but it's incredible. He's got a great book called 12 Rules for Life. And it's a little bit more accessible than some of his other work, but there's some great stuff in there, and you can take it a section at a time and just kind of mull on that. But he has a great understanding of the psyche of the way that we work as humans, the way that we work together. There's a great, I forget which chapter it is, but one of them's called Be More Like a Lobster. I don't know if either of you have read this book, but the lobsters have a kind of social network which is not dissimilar to ours. So there's a kind of alpha males and domination. And basically what happens is, two lobsters get into a fight. One of them wins, and then they kind of dominate. And the secondary lobster becomes the beta male, if you like, and lives at that level. And it's talking about how, I'm paraphrasing here, and read his book because he'll say it in a much more succinct terms than I. But failure happens in our lives. Sometimes we fail, and we can't let that dominate where we go from there. So don't shrink back from that. You still have to go out in the world, and failure is not the end of the world. You can still go out there and be positive on the back of that. Don't shrink into that secondary position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
read
it
it, but
does.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
have, Jonathan. But
They're both on my reading list, actually, because I watch a lot of his talks. But I'm really working my way through a list of books at the moment. But yeah,
That's a good one because it's chapter by chapter, so you can just pick a chapter and just do that one, rather than having
oh,
the
okay.
whole. I think his maps and meanings, I think it's called, is it's really cerebral and really hard going, but that one is a bit more accessible, so that's nice.
Awesome. I'll pick up this one, Ollie. What projects or movements have you most excited right now?
Okay. So there's a lot of talk, and at FSB as well, we do a lot on sustainability, and this is kind of a hot topic at the moment, isn't it? We've got the COP26 summit going on and so on. From my point of view, going back even further than work, I actually studied environmental science at university, so it's a big thing. And back in my day, going back a bit, there was a famous it was called Agenda 21. It was part of the Rio summit. The environment was very big news. And I think what's really interesting at the moment is the response that lots of people are having is that, and I think Greta Thunberg has famously kind of summed this up, is that there's a lot of talk, isn't there? And we're kind of reaching a point now that talk needs to turn into action. So I think it's going to be really interesting over the next few weeks to see what action is taken. And there's a lot of people, there's kind of a groundswell, I think, now of people who are saying, I'm going to take this into my own hands and looking at sustainability from that perspective and how they can make a difference. And so this is just a really interesting time, I think, for sustainability and for personal responsibility and personal action, and how governments respond to that, because overall, they are leading on this stuff, and that they have huge impacts on their choices of energy creation and so forth. So that's a movement that I think is really interesting at the moment.
I tell you what, the thing that I've thought about the most, I think, in the last few weeks is how exciting it is that in 8 years' time in the UK and a lot of other countries around that time, we won't be able to go out and buy a petrol or a diesel car brand new. That's just such a great step forward.
And gas boilers in your home as well is another thing. So there's real movement here now to look at that stuff. So
Awesome. What tech is improving your life most right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's tech. Yeah, we can class it under tech, but one kind of, I suppose, labor-saving device that I found really great over lockdown is that I implemented Calendly into my work, and that a lot of the kind of, because I'm talking to business owners and we're trying to arrange when we can talk to each other and so on and so forth. That has just taken away a huge part of heavy lifting of trying to organize when people can talk to each other. So now you just send each other the link, you sync it with your diary, and you can have an appointment, in a week's time or whatever, that works for everyone. I think that, and it's free. I know there's a paid version, but in terms of, a kind of labor saving device, it saved me a couple of hours a week, no doubt. I think it's a great little tool.
And one that we've just implemented, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was about to say, sounds quite familiar.
and it's just sensible, right? Rather than the back and forth that otherwise we have to do.
Yeah, that back and forth. I mean, you just use up so much time. But yeah, a really great tool. I'm sure you guys are going to love it.
Nice one.
Perfect.
All right. I think this next one probably builds on your last, your sustainability topic. But what's one thing that you would like to change in the world?
Yeah, I think it would lead down that, but I don't have a specific thing, because I think these the solutions to where we are really, really complicated, and it's just not a case of saying, right, we have to turn off fossil fuels, or we have to do X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of complication in all of this stuff, which is why we haven't been able to. You can say there's some apathy as well, but it's why we haven't been able to solve it. So I think that this stuff is moving in the right direction, and we definitely need to do something. There can be no question about the impact that we're having on the environment. That's kind of gone now, and so it's great to see that we are moving in that direction. So I wish I had an answer to the one thing, but I'm pleased that this stuff is now on the agenda and is on lots and lots of people's, and the fact that people are taking personal responsibility for it rather than just sitting back and waiting for something to happen. I think this is really positive.
What's one thing you would like people to take away from this episode?
I think that in terms of, I think the one thing is, as I said earlier, I think the one thing is that just to recognize that you don't have to do everything yourself and you can't have all the answers yourself. There are organizations out there, and obviously I'm going to mention FSB again, but there are organizations out there, and FSB is one of the biggest ones that help support you as a business owner. And so don't be afraid to reach out and say, you know what, I could do with some help with something here, or I don't have the answer to that. You know, you're probably not a lawyer, you're not an HR specialist, you're not a tax specialist, you're not a GDPR specialist. You know, there's a lot of stuff that running a business involves. And I think the one thing I would like people to take away is just don't be afraid to reach out and have this have those conversations, get the support that you need so that you can focus on the doing of your business and the growing of the business and the serving of your clients or your customers in the best way. That's the bit that you're good at. Reach out and get some help with the other stuff.
Well said. Well said. And you could probably even extend that, right? Just don't be afraid to ask for help in any area of your life.
In any area of life. And actually that touches on a really good point, actually, Ollie, is that the last 18 months for lots of people have been really difficult. Obviously, we've seen lots of rise in kind of the mental health is a huge piece. I've been involved in some stuff myself around that. And I think I would say, especially for men, we kind of a bit guarded on asking for that help. And yeah, this is a really important subject area as well. And we actually have, as part of the FSB, mental health first aid nurses, and members can talk to them on an ongoing basis for the rest of their lives if they want to, at no charge. So it's just, again, it's reaching out to the right people and just saying, you know what, I need some help. This is a real struggle. I don't know what to do here, and getting that guidance. And in all areas of life, I think that the mental health one is, and again, there's positives here that I think talking about mental health has become less stigmatized, and that can only be a positive.
Totally agree. I mean, it's now openly discussed in the office, right?
Yeah.
Which just never would have happened before. I'm such and such. Nice to meet you. Great to be working with you on this particular project. And I suffer from depression, so yeah, I'm not so good after 4:00 in the afternoon. Could we meet a bit earlier in the day? I mean, whoever said that?
Wow.
In the 90s or 80s, right?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So how can people go about getting in touch with you, Andrew? Obviously, we'll put whatever you mentioned in the notes.
Yeah, so, there's Calendly. So I'll put my Calendly link in the notes. I'm happy to have a chat with anyone on that format. Email is, we'll put that in the notes as well, but it's andrew.murphy@fsb.org.uk. They're probably the two primary ones. Feel free to reach out, and I will talk to anyone who thinks that they need some help or doesn't think they need some help but just wants to find out more. And if we can't help, very much I think of us as a kind of signposting mechanism as well. So if it's not something that we cover, I can probably signpost you to other people who help with those things. So just reach out that way via those links in the notes.
Thank you. Jonathan, did you have anything else?
No, I think unless Andrew, you have anything else you would like to promote? Any upcoming events or anything like that?
No, not particularly. I mean, maybe we can put a link to the FSB events on here as well, because there's a whole raft of events that are going on pretty much every day. We've got ones on sustainability, we've got ones on mental health, we've got ones on a whole raft of different topics, and everyone's invited to those. You don't have to be a member to access those resources. So, I guess what I'd like to promote is that again, there's a whole raft of resources that could help you in your business and in your personal life available, and have a look at those. Have a look at those resources.
Good on you. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you again for for joining us on the Problem Busters.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You can follow, well, to our listeners, you can follow Problem Busters on all major social media platforms. Just typing Problem Busters podcast, and keep a lookout for our highly anticipated sort of snippets of this episode and a link to the full episode sort of library of Problem Busters podcast. So I think that is it. And thank you for joining us and take care. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.